In the past, one could watch a great spectacle that cannot be witnessed today. In our historic past, there was an odd event a person could watch for entertainment, and that was a staged train crash. The first staged train crash was in 1895 and continued to the 1930s, with the last staged train crash was in 1935. According to historians, there were at least 146 staged train crashes in the United States, and it is thought that number is actually higher. The most famous of the staged train crashes was in Crush, Texas, in 1896, which approximately 40,000 spectators witnessed a spectacular train crash. What made this crash so famous was that during the collision of the locomotives, one of the locomotive's boilers blew up, sending metal into the crowd of spectators, killing 2 and injuring many others. The staged train crash was an odd form of entertainment by today's standard. This odd event is exactly that, a staged train crash. A person or persons, usually showmen, would buy 2 steam locomotives and have 2 trains going in opposite directions on the same track. The engineers of the locomotives would put coal or wood in the furnace of the steam locomotive to stoke the fire, then they would jump off the moving locomotive. The spectators were supposed to be in a safe area away from the tracks and watch the train collision of 2 heavy metal steam locomotives. The steam locomotives were completely destroyed in the train crash. The showman would go all over the country staging these train crashes at county fairs and other festive events, making money by charging people to watch the crash. But here's what is very questionable to me, is why were these heavy metal steam locomotives so cheap and abundant to buy? A complete waste of 2 working steam locomotives for entertainment purposes. It would seem these steam locomotives would be more valuable for pulling loads of freight or passengers for thousands of miles on many runs than a one-time spectator event, which makes me question if they're even telling us the truth about the history of the steam locomotives. The first steam locomotive was invented in the 1770s, and the first railroads in America were built between 1810 and 1830. History is sketchy about what date the very first railroad in America was built. So the steam locomotives, according to history, are not that old of an invention. But there are a lot of questionable things about the story of the steam locomotive, like the Lorryville steam locomotive found in the bottom of the river in the backcountry of Florida, and then dredged up out of the river. The story of how it got there is very questionable to me. And that is, in the 1900s, the locomotive fell off a barge going across a small river for a logging company. Or like the 2 steam engines that are in 90 feet of water off the coast of Long Branch, New Jersey. There are no records or story of how they got there. Also, what is very questionable to me is all of the abandoned train tunnels all over the United States, like the Cascade Tunnel in Washington State, or the Donner Pass tunnels in California, or the Board Tree Tunnel outside of Littleton, West Virginia, just to name a few of the old abandoned train tunnels that are all around the country. It is very questionable to me that all these old train tunnels were built in the 1800s and early 1900s by a small population of people who had no heavy diesel machinery like we do today, just to be abandoned not long after they were built. But the old steam locomotives were starting to get replaced by modern locomotives in America by the 1940s, and by 1960 they were completely phased out. The question to me is why? The official answer is modern diesel locomotives are much more efficient to run than steam locomotives. But is that true? It is reported that most of the train engineers that transitioned from steam locomotives to diesel locomotives said that they liked driving the old steam locomotives better. Almost everyone would agree that the old steam locomotives were more aesthetic and pretty to look at than modern locomotives. Also, the old steam locomotives made a much nicer and easier to listen to sound than modern locomotives do. When a railroad occasionally sends one of the few working antique steam locomotives down their railroad for the public to see, there are always big crowds of people there to watch the steam locomotive go through the town, which shows the appeal that these old steam locomotives have to most people. But the question is, why in the past were these steam locomotives destroyed in big numbers? And why were they replaced so quickly when they seem to do a very good job at pulling freight and people? Is the reason they tell us, or is there another reason? If we look at the 1900s, we see throughout the world old, ornate, beautiful buildings being destroyed only to be replaced by ugly modern buildings. Why? Is the real reason this? Is if we look in the Bible in Revelation 20:3, it states that Satan would be let loose for a season. If we are living in the season of Satan, which I believe we are, then it would make sense that the devil would destroy the beautiful things of the past, like steam locomotives and old grand buildings and bridges, and replace them with ugly modern buildings and locomotives to make our world ugly and to hide the beautiful past. And our real history is a lot different than the history we have been taught. Anyway, thanks for watching my video and have a good day.